The memento mori, the reminder that you are going to die. Live your life. Be present right now, because someday you will be no more. Oftentimes, this is represented by the presence in a piece of art of a skull. That skull being the house of what was once a mind. Now, it's just a couple of bones. The poem we're going to discuss today, so the idea there, the memento mori, the skull as the reminder that you're going to die, is a very sullen idea. It's a very serious idea. It's a very sad idea. It's a very scary idea. But that skull is always smiling. Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here to talk about a poem. This is a poetry discussion which will appear in 3 different playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being the poetry discussion playlist, now over 800 videos strong. Number 2 being the classic haunts playlist in celebration of Halloween 2025, 31-ish. At least 31 videos in 31 days. Depends on how well I can get off my butt and do some of this other work. Celebrating the Halloween. And number 3 is the horror genre playlist. I don't know why this is taking me so long to get through on this channel. The poem in question today is known as The Skeleton by G.K. Chesterton. And I have some visuals here as well, so I might have to come back and readjust things. The Skeleton by G.K. Chesterton, and it reads as such. Chattering finch and water fly are not merrier than I. Here among the flowers I lie, laughing everlastingly. No, I may not tell the best. Surely, friends, I might have guessed, death was but the good king's jest. It was hid so carefully. Death being the good king's jest, it was hid so carefully. It was hidden so that we were learning all our lives to be afraid of it. But maybe there is something better after death than before death. Is that what the skeleton here is suggesting? The poem from G.K. Chesterton. I want to talk about some things around this. So there is an idea in there is an idea surrounding death that it is sad. There is an idea surrounding horror of mirth. How often have you seen, how popular is the campy type of horror genre? When you think of Jason, when you think of Freddy Krueger, these characters are different than, for example, Michael Myers. You go into a Freddy movie thinking you're going to laugh at something, right? You go into a Friday the 13th movie thinking there is going to be some type of gore that is just so absurd, you're going to laugh at something. There's a little bit of something different to that than Michael Myers, who you know is just dread. That ever-present force. That mysterious facade, blank facade, very different than Freddy Krueger. Different even, I would suggest, than the blank facade of Jason. Jason has this lumbering sort of presence that is more human-like versus the slow and meticulous and very explosive violence of Michael Myers. Otherwise slow, but very explosive when the violence happens, right? That seems inhuman versus Jason, which seems superhuman, that superhuman strength. You laugh at Freddy Krueger. You laugh at Jason. You do not laugh at Michael Myers. There is a different quality to that, but where does that come from? So this is a skeleton dancing past the graveyard, right? this is something that is not all that strange to see. This is a representation of the poem in question. You have the bird, you have the fly, you have the smiling skeleton in the field. This is a different type of horror than dread. There is something recognizable here, though. There is something quite comfortable here, though. Look, horror itself might be uncomfortable, but it is not something which seems foreign to us. We understand that feeling. There's something so alluring to being afraid that the horror genre has lived forever. Before movies, we had scary stories for eons. There is something that is appealing to horror, but there is something different to horror that makes us laugh. There is something, I would say, not even foreign to that type of thing, which is known as the danse macabre, the dance of death, the idea of the dead and the dance, the danse macabre. This is a type of danse macabre picture here. What is danse macabre? Well, we go to Wikipedia. It tells us this. The danse macabre consists of the dead, or the personification of death, summoning representatives from all walks of life to dance along the grave, typically with a pope, emperor, king, child, and laborer. Those are elements that are often associated with the image of danse macabre. The effect is both frivolous and terrifying. Frivolous and terrifying, and it has lasted forever. We're going to get into some of this. Beseeching its audience to react emotionally. It was produced as memento mori, to remind people of the fragility of their lives and the vanity of earthly glory. Its origins are postulated from illustrated sermon texts. The earliest recorded visual schemes, apart from the 14th century triumph of death paintings, was a now lost mural at Holy Innocents Cemetery in Paris dating from 1424 to 1425. That is 600 years ago. Written in 1874 by the French composer Camille Saint-Saëns. Danse Macabre, Op. 40, is a haunting symphonic poem for orchestra. It premiered the 24th of January, 1875. So it was even an idea in music a couple hundred years ago. Now, when we start getting into this idea of joy and death mixed together, there is something especially haunting about it, but something that does not feel particularly foreign. There is a word for it. It's a word you know, and it's a word that you probably don't realize has this connotation to it, but when you really think about how you use this word, it makes a lot of sense. From Wikipedia, since at least the 18th century, in French and German as well as English, grotesque has come to be used as a general adjective for the strange, mysterious, magnificent, fantastic, hideous, ugly, incongruous, unpleasant, or disgusting, and thus is often used to describe weird shapes and distorted forms such as Halloween masks. Now, this isn't exactly a definition of grotesque. You'll catch on to this in a moment when we get to an actual definition of the grotesque. But what I wanted to do with this, well, I'll just finish the definition that Wikipedia provides first. In art, performance, and literature, however, grotesque may also refer to something that simultaneously invokes an audience feeling of uncomfortable bizarreness as well as sympathetic pity. Okay, so you have there this idea of the grotesque, which the word itself means all of these different things. Mysterious, magnificent, fantastic, hideous, ugly, incongruous, unpleasant, or disgusting. That is not a great definition then, is it? So it is a word that is perhaps best understood through visuals than other words. And we have the artistic definition in art, performance, and literature. However, grotesque may also refer to something that simultaneously invokes an audience in a feeling of uncomfortable bizarreness. Okay, we kind of understand that part, right? As well as sympathetic pity. That's kind of a weird quirk to that definition. Sympathetic pity. Where does that come from? Well, what is the actual definition of grotesque? We come down here from Oxford. Comically or repulsively ugly or distorted. Comically. What do you do when something is comedic? You laugh at it. You laugh at something comedic. It is funny to you. So the idea of the grotesque is something that has been with us for a long time, but we don't know really where it came from. We do, however, have an example of... So we don't know where it came from, so we have no idea why it's useful to us. If it's not useful to us, why is it in us, seemingly, to the extent that we can't explain it? It is something so deeply seated in us that we can recognize it. We can partake in the idea of the grotesque. We can immediately understand the relevance of something like a danse macabre. We can immediately see a skeleton dancing and grasp the sort of emotional gravitas to something like that. It is something which we see, we understand, we take in, and we internalize almost immediately. The symbol of the skull as a memento mori, the symbol of the skull as a reminder of death, is something that works so simply that it is almost undefinable. It is almost something that we cannot look at and say, okay, let me put this into words. It is something that is reactionary within us. But is that something that has come to us recently? Is this something that is nature or nurture? Is this something that we have just kind of come across as it has been inundated? We have been inundated with this. It has been indoctrinated since the day that we are born, right? This is sort of like a cultural thing. We have seen this image every October since we were born. Well, there is, if we're talking about art, something to be said about that. Around 1480, artists in Rome rediscovered the buried chambers of Emperor Nero's Domus Aureae, Golden House. The walls and ceilings were covered with fantastical decorations, hybrid human-animal figures, distorted faces, and playful monsters and whimsical ornaments. These are the very same things that, for example, Michelangelo and Leonardo would go on to paint and draw 1,000+ years later, 1,500 years later. Nero was, quoting from Wikipedia here, a Roman emperor and the final emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, reigning from AD 54 until his death in AD 68. So you're talking about a 2,000 year ago emperor who had these drawings in his bedroom or something. I don't know where they were. Chambers. What are the odds that Nero invented this? Very low, if you ask me. Probably Nero had recognized this somewhere along his life and said, I like that aesthetic. I want it in my room, right? So we're going back 2,000 years, and there is someone so powerful as Nero who has recognized this grotesque art form and said, I like that. Give me some of it. That is 2,000 years ago. How old is this idea with us? How long have we carried this recognition of the comedic nature of death. How long have we been able to look at something like a skull and recognize that it is important for us to come to terms with the fact that we will not be around forever? That is what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, this is all I do here, literature. There's poetry every Monday, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.